I don't think Bret is really that established in the field that he left to go become a full-time YouTuber. But anyway, he's done this a couple times. Go ahead.
Had to be, because he was like a. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I guess I don't know, but I mean, he was a professor at this like weird hippie college that is. I'm guessing was probably not too uptight about that.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, but yeah. And then, by the way, I really wish that the student protesters in Evergreen had left him alone, because if they had, none of us would know his name.
It wouldn't have been a great launch pad, including Tucker Carlson, which was one of the first mainstream formats he appeared on. But anyway, he's on back with Tucker in what's called the Tucker Carlson encounter, which I gotta say sounds like the type of reason he gets fired from Fox News to avoid a lawsuit. Like the Tucker Carlson, that is a okay, man. Sure, I guess we're calling it that because you're in the woods now or something. But yeah,
is he supposed to be in Maine? Where's he supposed to be? Anyway,
he's in
let's
Maine.
get to this clip. Let's get this clip.
Here we go.
I wrote an essay years ago about the one-child policy and the paradox of a heavy bias in favor of males. No matter how different males and females are in their maximum reproductive capacity, they tend to default to 1-to-1. If you have a society that has too many females, you should produce a male. And if you have a society with too many males, you should produce a female, which tends to balance these things out. That logic should have applied to China. The fact is there were lots of excess males. And if you put yourself in the mindset of a Chinese person having a child, if there are too many males, you should want to produce a female. A male is very unlikely to find a mate. A female is certain to find one. And what's more, she has her pick of the litter.
Yes.
So that logic should have caused...
Everything you're saying right now makes perfect sense to me, buddy.
With you so far.
All right, it's all right.
The sex ratio to return to 50-50, and yet it did not, which caused me all those years ago when I wrote this piece to wonder if there wasn't another evolutionary force in play. If evolution did not have a mechanism for producing armies, that when a country was in a position to expand, that producing excess males does pay off at a lineage level, that excess males who have no reproductive prospects at home become an effective weapon against neighboring populations. So I can't believe that that did not occur to me as I was preparing for this trip, but it has occurred to me now.
Wow, man.
I guess it didn't occur to me because when I wrote that all those years ago, I was expecting to see evidence that this was turning into a military force, and I didn't see it. So I stopped thinking about it. But now I wonder if that isn't exactly right, and if what happened is that a male-biased population in China was produced as a weapon, and if that weapon is now being deployed.
It's remarkable.
I'm sorry, not to take away from
I just want to start with some credit where credit's due. That Tucker has actually improved his interview style, because at some point since the last time I saw him, he's learned to close his mouth while his guest speaks.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how many Chinese soldiers compared to American soldiers have been killed in action in the past 20 years. Probably pretty similar numbers.
Who has decided this? Is this what I can't understand is this like Xi, or is this just the genetics have told the Chinese?
That's such a great point.
As a collective,
just trying to relate it to evolution. It's like, well, okay, so you're just saying that spontaneously everybody was doing this because evolution. Like, I'm so confused about how
when he said choose, right? And we got to remember, like the one-child policy was brutal, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about it, like from evolutionary perspective, look, I'm not a geneticist or an evolutionary biologist or anything like that. But what is he talking about? Like choosing which children to have, like your loins are deciding which ones to produce.
This is a Darwinian sense, yeah.
You know, like this is a social thing that's going on. You know, which I think is something that is condemnable. For example, to privilege one gender over another. I mean, that's, you know, it's an awful thing. But to act like this is like evolutionary and it's actually some kind of like genetic warfare to prepare for massive.
I mean, as I always understood it, the gender imbalance. I mean, the usual explanation was, you know, infanticide, right? Or you know, at the like that's at the very least, I suppose, you know, abortion after finding out in the ultrasound, you know, what the sex was going to be. Which, you know, again, those seem like conscious choices, not anything that has anything to do with evolution. And it's also like, so putting aside whatever the fuck evolution is supposed to do in this argument, which I'm really confused by. Like, I kind of want, I mean, Tucker's not going to ask this, but like, I really want some follow-up questions. Like, okay, wait a second. So evolution, right? You're talking about like genetic variation and natural selection, right? That's what we're talking about here, right? Like, take me through it step by step, how to connect the dots from there to what you're talking about. But even putting aside evolution, I mean, like, is the idea that like individual Chinese families, of whom, you know, there are a lot, we're all in on this conspiracy to try to generate more males so they could have a bigger army, so they could defeat the United States one day?
Yeah. Well, you know, us DEI wokes, or whatever you want to call us, we might dismiss the science.
God, that's what I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The truth is that this is not the first time Bret has done this. This is a pretty one of his favorite cards to play in his sort of grifter catalog, and this is from years ago. This is my favorite clip of this guy. It's him with a little guy people might know named Richard Dawkins. Himself no slouch in like being an asshole, but Richard, I think, has a little bit better grounding in reality than our boy Bret does. And they start talking about World War II here. And this is, I think, maybe the best example and refutation of Bret Weinstein's brand of charlatanism I've seen.
Very much so, yes.
The Second World War.
Yes.
Right? Even the terminology. You had the fatherland effectively raping Mother Russia. I mean, that's even the terminology, right? So what this was a lineage level phenomenon in which a population went after two other populations, one that was internal to its borders or its near neighbors, and one population that was distant but had a great many resources. But the point is, understood from the perspective of German genes, vile as these behaviors were, they were completely comprehensible from the level of fitness. It was abhorrent and unacceptable, but understandable that Germany should have viewed its Jewish population as a source of resources. If you viewed Jews as non-people, then whatever resources they had could be appropriated for German genes, and likewise, the future of Germany lies in Russia. All of the resources of Russia, and how many million, is it 20 million Russians it took to turn the German war machine around? So what you have are these population against population conflicts. If you view it as group selection, it makes no sense, but if you view them as lineages, it makes a great deal of sense. And the belief structures that caused people to step onto battlefields and fight were clearly comprehensible as adaptations of the lineages in question.
I think nationalism might be an even greater evil than religion. And I'm not sure that it's actually very helpful to talk about it in Darwinian terms. I think it's, this might be a case where we do need to defer a little bit to historians and non-biologists and think about it in other ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah, no, it's the German genes.
I mean, that's really it. That's all you need to show about that guy.
To get like fucking Dawkins that worked up is really special.
Well, I love I'm going to do an irreverent, I'm going to do nothing even responding to what you said, which is that, yeah, nationalism is wild how bad that is, right? And then it's like, okay, I kind of have to address what you just said. Can we not try to look at this in Darwinian terms? Like, can we maybe, like, is there a historian in the house? It's like someone's choking and you're looking for a doctor or something like that.
I mean, that was kind of a point where I did have the little pang of sympathy for Dawkins because, because look, never on this show, but I think you've all had experiences of being on podcasts and the interviewer will like frame a question in a really weird way, but it's like not like a hostile interview. You don't want to turn it into a debate in the moment. And so you just kind of have to figure out how to play it to like sort of like work in there somewhere that you think the framing is crazy.
Yeah,
exactly. You need something to point to in case people bust you on it later.
So, but what's so funny about this? I have to share this with you. I sent this to you, Matt.
I'm sorry. I do want to dwell for just a second on the German genes because, this is pretty special. Like that, the thing that made the Third Reich commit genocide against the Jewish population and try to conquer Eastern Europe
natural
was
selection.
genes.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, their genes.
Like the genes knew that they needed to do that, and like Hitler and the Nazi leadership, they were just like vessels. For this like genetic imperative, which oddly enough sounds a lot like what the Nazis themselves said about what they were doing.
But exactly. It's both like it sounds it really, you can read it in a sinister way, and it also sounds like it's just stupid, like in the way of like you're a freshman and you're applying like the little limited concepts you do know to everything else. Like it's just exactly like this one other thing I know about, and it's like you are overextending.
100%.
No, for sure. I mean, like it's not. I mean, look, to be clear about this, I think Bret Weinstein is an idiot, and I think I like to try to. I think we overuse this word. I like to make an effort not to overextend it, but I do actually think he's probably something of a grifter. But I don't think I don't think he's pro-Nazi. I mean, he's Jewish, whatever. But like, but I do think it's amazing that like this like dumbass genetic determinism that's like an attempt to make the one thing that he knows some stuff about biology cover everything. Like I think he's sort of back like somehow like a drunk pilot, if you will, right? Like he's like crashed into this place in his argument where he ends up actually sounded remarkably like a Nazi.
Right. It's like Limbaugh trying to do football commentary. And it's like, I can only relate this to politics. So everything's a politics metaphor or something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, like this is like, you don't think like, I mean, this is like the ultimate, like in cultural essentialism. Cause it's like, I don't know, man, like all of those like German socialists and communists and trade unionists who were killed before anybody else was, they didn't have the German genes.
The lineage, they weren't.
Well, this is like
Hey, he didn't say genes. He said lineage, okay? And he probably wrote an essay about it that was left like on his fucking G2 Mac or whatever. Like,
yeah, if not for the distributed idea suppression complex, that essay would have won like at least one Nobel Prize.
Well, no, like, so on this, like, just saying, like, how, like, when you try to overextend your knowledge into a bunch of other shit, you sound, one, you say insane shit, like what he was just saying about Nazi Germany. But two, you also sort of mimic something that other people who are really dumb do, people who don't know anything about a subject, and then try to extrapolate all sorts of things on it. And I sent this to Matt this morning, unrelated, not knowing what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is from like a comedy, I guess, podcast here in Texas from this show called Chad Prather. And he's interviewing this French guy about, I don't know, being French and why, and how he came to Texas. Anyways, you got to watch this because there's going to be some very similar themes here between what Bret is saying.
For American people to understand how much the World War I affected France back in the day. quarters of the men alive die in that war. The quarters of men who die are the toughest, like the strongest. So the French blood, the French genetic changed a lot after that, okay? Then goes the World War II, okay? And another part of the toughest guy died. All these tough, patriotic guys died. On the same time, all the refugees from Germany, Italy, Spain, all the communists, all the anarchists came to France to refugee. We lost million and million of toughest conservative men, and we gained million of communist refugees and anarchist refugees. So the population changed.
Sorry, who died?
Awesome.
It's like you don't want to say, well, actually, a lot of communists died because in World War II, because then you're buying into this sort of like this demented like.
No, I mean, it is worth noted, like, though, as far as the premise goes, that an awful lot of French communists died in World War II.
Oh, I mean, 100%. No, are you serious? And also, like, we want to talk about guys who got by. You want to talk about guys that got by during the fucking Nazi occupation of France? You think it was the communists or the fucking conservative?
Conservatives. Yeah, I think there's a few words.
The staff of people who were closer to this guy's politics than not. Which, I mean, with all of its, like they, like for the old, like only time since the French Revolution, they took all of the, used to be like all the money and everything, would always say like fraternité, égalité, liberté. And like they replaced it with something about like faith, family. Like that's the, that's who was running. Party. That's who was running the French government on behalf of the Nazis. And pretty famously, there was like a lot of collaboration, kind of all throughout French society. But also, my God, like, okay, fuck the premise, like just the.
Well, I mean, more than anything,
like also the. Like, okay, sorry, I'm still trying to process this argument because, like, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like there were enough, like, tough conservative dudes left in France that for them to like do all kinds of war crimes in Algeria to almost overthrow the very conservative president, when he was ready to get out of Algeria. Like, what are you talking about?
No, I mean, it is endlessly stupid. And I think more than anything, it's just because, I think Bret doesn't want to be seen as a dummy. I think he tries actually very hard to seem the opposite. And he might need to realize that his overextension of his evolutionary theory is starting to get him to sound like some weird ass guy on a no-name podcast in Texas.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.